Today I want to do the reread tag that was started by Scally Dandling about the books. I want to do this tag because I think I have a really different answer, or really different answers than most booktubers. I don't read a lot of new books, I don't read any brand new books because I only buy used books and things secondhand to be more zero waste. Seems like many booktubers reread a few books here and there, or it seems like they reread them for videos or for read-alongs or things like that, but mostly they seem concerned with, you know, reading the newest books, reading new releases, and I'm not concerned with those things. A lot of people reread, but very rarely, so a lot of booktubers rereading, but not rereading a lot, and I reread a lot. So I'm going to go through the questions. I have my notebook. And I'm also going to share some of my books that I reread. Question number 1, where do you sit on the rereading tag? Almost never or all the time. So definitely I sit way closer to all the time than most of the people that I've seen do this tag. I reread books several times a year, several books a year. I'll reread the same book every year for a while, or I'll reread my favorite books once a year, once every other year. I'll listen to books that I love over and over again. So I definitely sit on the almost all the time. Question number 2. Has this changed over your life? And I would say no. I've always reread. I really enjoy repetition. I enjoy repetition in art. I enjoy repetition in watching my favorite movies. I enjoy repetition in reading. I have done that since I was a kid. I remember rereading my favorite books, you know, or having my parents read me my favorite books over and over again. Question number 3 is, when do you reread? Immediately after, years later, or when the mood strikes. So I never read immediately after, like I won't finish a book and then immediately start it again, but I will sometimes reread it like within the same year if I'm really wanting to. I think that has changed a little bit over time. I think I used to reread books pretty soon after I had already read them. I'd want to read it again. And now I think I go usually a couple of years between rereads, but it's definitely also when the mood strikes. So it'll be, you know, it could be soon after, it could be years later, and it could be when the mood strikes. One of my all-time favorite books, Buddy Modern, I'll start thinking about again, or I'll recommend to someone, and then I'll like feel this need to reread it. I love this book, and I could talk about it at length, but it's the kind of book that I will reread just when I've been thinking about it. Question number 4 is, why do you reread? I reread because I love to revisit my favorite books. I find it very comforting. The story will get stuck in my head and I'll need to reread it. I'll reread it because I haven't read it in a while and some of the details are starting to fade. I'll reread to get out of a reading slump. A book that I love to reread and get me back in the mood to reading is The Great Gatsby. It's such a wonderful book, so short. I think it's only like just over 100 pages, and it's really easy to jump back in, but it's also a modern classic, so it's just gives you this great access to get back into reading and get me excited about reading again because it's one of my all-time favorite books. Question number 5 is, how do you reread? Faster, slower, just the best bits? And I would say I reread exactly the same. I don't think I read faster. I certainly don't skim or skip. If I'm going to reread a book, I reread the whole book. I don't think I go faster or slower. I think I reread just the same. Question number 6 is, what do you reread? Authors, genres, individual books. Definitely falls into authors and individual books. I have a lot of authors that I like almost their entire catalog, and I've reread almost their entire catalog. I would say that Tom Robbins is probably the biggest one of those. I've reread Jitterbug Perfume probably a dozen times. I like to go back and reread especially his earlier novels. I've probably read almost all his earlier novels at least 3 or 4 times, and then some of them way, way more. So I would say that falls into author. And then also individual books. I am not a huge Terry Pratchett fan. I'm not a huge Neil Gaiman fan. I mean, I like both those authors a lot, but I am a huge Good Omens fan. So I have probably reread this book 5 or 6 times, and I love to reread this particular individual book. Whereas I might not read other Terry Pratchett novels over and over again, I will always read Good Omens over and over again. Question number 7, is there a book you found better upon rereading? And I would say no. My books that I reread are my favorite books. So they've never gotten better. They've always been the best. 8 is there a book that was worse upon rereading? I'm sure that I have reread a book because I forgot what it was about or because of some assignment or something like that, and I'm sure I've liked it more the first time and not the second time, but I can't remember any of those because the rereading that I do is mostly just for rereading my favorite books. Question number 9 is your most reread book. I've alluded to this in other videos, but I have reread Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, all 5 novels, and I have reread the 2 Dirk Gently novels more times than I can count. I have reread them so much, partly because I listen to the audiobooks all the time, like literally every day. If I could help it, I would not have a day go by that I don't hear Douglas Adams' voice. So there is that, and that is weird. I would say that it's a tie between Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy as my most read of all time books. And then question number 10 is to tag someone. So a lot of people have done this tag. I would say that I can't tag anyone individually. I'm not sure who's done it and who hasn't, being fairly new to BookTube. But I would say please tag yourself and shout it out in the comments if you would like to do this tag. If you have a unique perspective on this tag, which I think if you never reread, or you reread a lot, or you reread certain books, or you reread for an interesting reason, that's a good starting place for an interesting take on this tag. It's an interesting idea that, especially in BookTube, where everything is so new releases and new books and the newest thing that's coming out and the kind of hot books right now, I see those books over and over again, but by different people. And I would love to know some books that people reread, because reread implies that they're definitely not new. I mean, obviously you could back to back reread a new release, but rereading usually will happen over time. So definitely, you know, if you reread books, I think it's interesting to see which books people are rereading. Are they rereading more modern books, newer contemporary books, or are they rereading their favorites, or are they rereading classics? A lot of people reread classics because they love them. So I'm glad to have done this reread tag. Let me know if you've read any of the books in the comments, or if you've reread any of the books that I mentioned in the comments. Bye! I definitely watched my favorite movies over and over again. I would rent like a movie for 3 days back in the days of VHS, and I would watch it like 30 times, you know, when I was a child and I had the time to do that kind of thing.